Hello?
Sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. सुनिरहेको छ.
सुनिरहेछु सर.
Hello?
सर सुनिरहेको छ.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You can please unmute and respond if you are hearing or not. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay. That's fine now. So now we have talked about the fluid, what fluid we should be giving and how to give, what is the formula. Now what to put in that fluid. So that is the electrolyte. So electrolytes, the composition of that is, this slide is very important to make your concept clear. So we have got three kind of fluid. That is plasma, that is the fluid in the blood. Other is interstitial fluid, that is the fluid between two cells. And another is the fluid that is inside the cell. So we should know where the patient is losing the fluid, whether it's the fluid is the patient losing fluid from the plasma or interstitial fluid or the intracellular fluid. On that basis, we should replace the electrolytes. If you look at this plasma, if you take the blood, all the blood investigation you do is you take the blood from the vein, that is from intracellular, extracellular, that is the plasma. So in that plasma, we have got sodium level of 135 to 145. Potassium is 3.5 to 5. So all of them has a fixed value, and that is from the extracellular, that is from the blood. But that is not the value that occurs everywhere in the body. If you look at the interstitial fluid, then the sodium is almost the same. Okay, chloride is a little bit high. Bicarbonate is same thing. Potassium, they're almost same. Interstitial fluid and the plasma. That is extracellular. If you look at the intracellular, look at this thing. The potassium is 150. Okay, so whereas this is only 4. The huge difference, intracellular and extracellular. Okay, bicarbonate is less. and the sodium is very less, 140. So this is how it differs in the intracellular and the extracellular. So another important thing is where, if you look at the fluid that is gets secreted in the stomach, small intestine, colon, pancreas, and bile, all of them have different concentration. So how it helps? So we have got different diseases, like somebody has gastric obstruction, some other have a small intestine obstruction, some have disease of pancreas and bile. So where the loss is, depending upon that, we'll give the fluid. So again, we back to this basic things, that is we have studied in chemistry, that is osmosis, diffusion, filtration, and active transport, how they differs. So it's only remember recap of your +2 days. The osmosis is the movement of water from higher concentration to the lower concentration. No, sorry, from this, from lower concentration to the higher concentration. So diffusion is from higher concentration to the low concentration, and the facilitative is with the use of energy, and the barrier will do, and filtration is that is determined by the pressure gradient. So same thing happening in the body also. So in the diffusion, higher concentration to lower concentration. Osmosis against this thing. The water is coming to higher concentration. Filtration is with the pressure gradient. In the blood, in our blood vessels, we have got blood pressure, systolic and diastolic. So this pressure help this blood to go to the capillaries, and they come back to this vein, and this is how the circulation of the blood occurs every day. So the active transport means there is use of some energy. Okay, if some energy is used, then we'll call it as the active transport, like ATP. The energy is from the ATP. So this is the typical example of intracellular and the extracellular. So sodium is high extracellularly, potassium is high intracellularly. So this is a very tight balance. If this balance is broken, then we have got so many problems. So now let's come towards the disease. The main, all of them are equally important, but the most commonly we face the problem is in the concentration of sodium, potassium, calcium. So these are the three major ions that we should be very watchful about. So hyponatremia means decrease in sodium concentration. So what is the normal level is 135 to 145. So if it's less than 135, this is hypo. It's more than 145, this is hyper. So because the blood goes in every part of the body, so any concentration, if it is less than, they have got generalized manifestation from central nervous system, musculoskeletal, GI, cardiovascular, any tissues or kidney. You can see everywhere. So like if you have cough, fever, you say pneumonia. Okay, if you have got abdominal pain, you say it's a pancreatitis or appendicitis. But in this electrolyte imbalance, there is no any particular sign or symptoms which can pinpoint, because it is generalized thing. So hypernatremia, so hyper or hypo. So sometimes they are almost similar in presentation. Okay, so you should have the clinical suspicion to diagnose this thing. So depending on the concentration, so if somebody has, we level it hyponatremia if it is less than 135, but the problem starts if it goes below 130, because there is the reason for this all problem is if there is hyponatremia, then brain cell will start swelling. So it is called cerebral edema. And if it is less than 125, because there is intracranial pressure will increase, so patient has nausea and malaise. Less than 120, they have other problems. If less than 115, then it's very emergency condition. Patient will have seizure and coma. Patient can go to the coma. So less than 125 is very important. If somebody's sodium is less than 30, even less than 30, then you should be very watchful. If you don't manage it properly, then patient can die anytime. Hyponatremia, there are certain steps. So it's a very huge topic, and I want to simplify it. First, you should know patient osmolality. So it has got very big role to diagnosis. Okay, our osmolality of the body is around 280 to 300. So if it is hypoosmolar, isoosmolar, or the hyperosmolar, and you should know the volume status of the patient, whether it's a hypervolumic, euvolumic, and hypovolumic, whether the patient has dehydration or not, or they are very much hydrated. And you should know the sodium concentration in the urine, whether kidney is functioning properly or not. So this is the formula there at undergraduate level. You don't require to calculate all these things. If you know it, then it's better. And other is the patient has very less, like 115 or 110. Then this doesn't mean that you have to rapidly correct this deficit. You should be very slow in correcting the deficit. Otherwise, it has some counterproductive effect. So once you have diagnosed the osmolarity, then we should correct that one. If somebody is hypoosmolar, then you have to increase the osmolarity. If it is hyperosmolar, then you have to increase, correct in that way. Okay. And although you should always treat the cause. The cause of hyponatremia can be so many things, like patient is drinking much, or patient is drinking agents that is increasing hyperosmolarity. Somebody has disease of COPD or pneumonia. Anything can cause hyponatremia. Somebody has gone or surgery. So if you should find the cause and treat that cause. The opposite factor is the hypernatremia, that is more than 125, 145 or 46. The signs and symptoms are never the specific, they are always non-specific one. So first thing in electrolyte thing or any sick patient is you should know the volume status, whether patient is dehydrated or not, or overhydrated. So that is the first thing you do. And other is you should measure the sodium in the urine, and this is the formula for calculation. So the major reason for hypovolemic is in fact, this is the major cause of why the patient present, because of vomiting and diarrhea. So many children and the adult they admit in the hospital because of excessive water loss. Patient has dehydration. On this patient should give the fluid now. You have to correct the hydration status. Isovolemic, something called diabetic insipidus is there. This is the medical condition. This is the cause of isovolemic hypernatremia. Hypervolemic means somebody is getting excessive amount of fluid. So this is the flow chart to do what to do. If somebody has high volume, then we should work out for all this thing. Normal volume, then we should take the history in this regards. If there is non-renal causes, hypovolemic, then should search for this thing. So this is basic guideline. You will be studying this more and more in the medicine. So I think we have covered this one. Okay, just to mention what is diabetes insipidus. So there are two kinds of diabetes. One is diabetes mellitus and one is diabetes insipidus. So you will be learning all this thing in medicine, not in the surgery. So just to make sure, the diabetes mellitus is the disease of pancreas. Okay, so diabetes insipidus is it has a two types: central and peripheral. Central is there is lack of production in ADS, that is in problem in the hypothalamus. If some disease in the hypothalamus that is not producing enough ADS, then it will cause hypernatremia. Or in the kidney, the ADH is produced, but the receptor, all these things, they work with this receptor. The receptor in the kidney is not working, so that is called nephrogenic. So what will happen if you do rapid correction? Then there will be cerebral edema and permanent neurological damage. So you should never correct anything like this rapidly. Rather, you should collect the water half in first 24 hours, then remaining in 2 to 3 days. The key is always correct this problem slowly. Another common is the hyperkalemia, and it's a very dangerous one. The etiology cause are so many. So these are the whole chart we can get in the textbooks. What is the cause of hyperkalemia and what is the cause of hypokalemia? It's from the dietary factor and all this endocrine disorder, from GI loss. But potassium is also very important, and normal, generally the normal is 3.5 to 5. So different lab have different thing. So why it is so important? Because they will cause change in the cellular transmembrane potential, and that will directly lead to the cardiac arrhythmia. So that's why this potassium is very dangerous. Patient can die within seconds because of cardiac arrhythmia. The hyperkalemia means that increase in potassium that is caused by what are the cause we can see from the drugs or any surgery or so many things. They will increase that level. And symptoms, they are not specific. But one thing we can directly pick up is from ECG pattern. So it will be taught in the medicine. What are the... So look this one. In hyperkalemia, if it is mild, peak T wave, prolonged PR interval. So ECG is a different topic. After reading this one, you will be knowing all this thing. If it's a moderate, then loss of P wave. Okay, this is the P1. We have a loss of P wave. If it's a severe one, it's increasing in diameter. So just to know what are the things happening, but you should be reading ECG is very important, and you will be reading ECG in the medicine, not in the surgery. The one thing you know is, if you have some problem with the potassium, then what you will do, you measure this level in the blood and you will do ECG. So that is very important. So only the first thing is the treat the cause. What is the cause? You should first find out the cause and you treat that cause. So that is the treatment of hyperkalemia. The severe hyperkalemia. So this is the treatment of severe hyperkalemia. It is asked in the exam. This is the very important questions they will ask in the medicine, not in the surgery, but in the medicine. So these are the things which you do. You give sodium bicarbonate, you give 25% dextrose and insulin, all this thing. You give. Okay. So there are other things like beta agonist and calcium gluconate. So the emergency management. So treatment of severe hyperkalemia is the very important question. Okay, this one, I don't think you require this one, and we'll talk about the hypokalemia. Okay. So it is also equally important, and there are so many causes. I think in that chart we have shown the causes of hyperkalemia. So what they do, they will attack the heart directly and our muscle. The function of muscle, it is very much related to the potassium level. If there is lower concentration, then we have got paralysis. Our muscle will lose the tonicity and will collapse. So similarly, we can diagnose hypokalemia on the ECG. Movement of the bowel and muscle all depends on potassium, and first we should replace these. We should know the cause of the hypokalemia and we'll treat accordingly. Similarly, the main philosophy is you should always do the correction very slowly, and while giving the potassium, it's given in 40. We should not give 40 millimole per day. Okay, that is the maximum level we can correct, and rate should not be more than 20 millimole per hour. So it should be very slow, otherwise it will kill the patient, the treatment. Okay, now potassium. Another important is the calcium. Basically calcium has a regulator by the parathyroid hormone and the calcitonin. So calcitonin is produced from the thyroid gland and parathyroid is from parathyroid gland. They'll work exactly opposite. So what does calcitonin do? It will increase the calcium concentration in the bone, whereas the parathyroid hormone, they will increase the calcium concentration in the blood. So they will act opposite. The result from hyperthyroidism, hypothyroid state, renal disease, so many things, causes of hypercalcemia. And the drugs. So they will also have non-specific problems like fatigue, increased formation of kidney stone, muscle cramp, bradycardia, pain, okay, constipations. So not a specific one. So label is, always understand the label, usually is 10, 8 to 10, sometimes it's called 12. So depending on how much is hypercalcemia, on their severity, we'll always manage these conditions. If there is very severe, then we'll always give normal saline and loop diuretic to wash out the calcium. And there are two conditions which I want to show you here is, okay, this on this, the Vostek sign and the Trousseau sign. So these are the two clinical conditions which will be asked in the exam to demonstrate the Vostek sign and the Trousseau signs. What are they? The Vostek sign is if you this thing tap. I have got a picture or not? Let me see. This one, okay. This is the Trousseau signs. What's happening here? This is the BP cuff here. If you inflate it, then there will be spasm of the muscle. Your finger get spasm, and we have got this appearance in hypocalcemia patient. Okay, this is happening there, and this is the Vostek sign. So what's happening here? If you tap the facial nerve, the entry of the facial nerve in the face, if you tap here, then the patient has this much expression of this one. This is the Vostek sign. So these are the two clinical signs and symptoms we'll be learning from the hypocalcemia. So I think we are for the end of the lecture. So what we have learned today is a little bit of physiology. What are the organs that are responsible to maintain the homeostasis of fluid and electrolytes? So what are the physiological condition of fluid loss, and what is the pathological conditions? And while going to diagnosis, what we have taught is that diagnosis is from three parts, like history, examination, and investigation. So these three are the diagnostic modalities. After diagnosis, we'll treat depending upon the cause. And important is how to calculate the fluid. So that is very important. And potassium management of severe hyperkalemia is very important in the medicine. Definitely it is important everywhere. The question will be asked in the medicine. And what are the hyponatremia, hyperkalemia, hypocalcemia? So these all are the important electrolytic events that is happening in the body. So if anybody has any question, then you can ask me. Hello? We have got very less, it's only 53. Hello? Please unmute yourself. So how many of you are here? 51 only. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But there, how much? What is the strength? 120.